Let's bring in our legal panel now. ABC News chief legal analyst Dan Abrams, former New Jersey governor and former federal prosecutor Christie, and former Trump White House chief of staff Reince Priebus. Thanks for joining us this morning, all of you. And Dan, I want to start with you. This is an extremely vague indictment. Tell us what we know and don't know.
Well, we know that it was about authorizing someone at the FBI to leak. We also know it was about a statement that he made on September 30th, 2020. So right there, that tells us a lot. We know which statement they're talking about. We also know that he's reiterating something he said before. Why is that important? Because we also know that that has been investigated already, that the Inspector General of the Department of Justice investigated this issue, that the first Trump administration investigated this, and no one decided to move forward with any charges in connection with this. What we don't know is exactly who is the person who he was leaking to. It seems it was his friend Daniel Richman, but of course that poses questions about, was he at the FBI? He was an unpaid advisor to Comey at the time. Is that someone who's at the FBI? So there are still a lot of questions about exactly what article was this, exactly what did he say to Richmond, who did Richmond talk to, et cetera.
And Chris, just playing off what Dan just said, he ousted his own former U.S. attorney who wouldn't press charges. Do you see a reason to prosecute here as a former prosecutor?
Well, you know, Martha, one of the things I used to say all the time when I was U.S. attorney is that one of the best things about the job was only you know what you know. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to put everything in the indictment that you have in terms of the evidence. And so, look, I can't make a judgment about whether I would have prosecuted this or not. But here's what I will say. It is concerning when you can't get an indictment returned on all the counts you have. Usually, an experienced prosecutor with ample evidence can convince a grand jury, because there's no counterfacts, to agree with the prosecution. It's very concerning here, and should be for DOJ, that they got what's called no billed by the grand jury on one of the counts, and got a bare majority on the other two. And so there are warning signs here that there may be very, very thin evidence. And let's face it, you're dealing with someone who has never prosecuted before, who authorized this, went into the grand jury. And it raises this question for me, Martha. Why wouldn't anybody else from EDVA, the Eastern District of Virginia office, handle this? And is it because they had already rejected this a number of times? Those are all warning signs.
And Reince, President Trump considers James Comey an enemy. Can you really say this is not a political prosecution?
Well, I mean, one of the things that you look at for whether somebody is being targeted wrongfully isn't just whether they're being politically targeted. One of the ways that you can defeat that claim is to show that other people, whether it be the FBI, the CIA, or in the Intel Committee, were in fact prosecuted. That's one of the ways you can defeat a claim that something is a political prosecution. And even if he is a political enemy, and he is. I mean, our first meeting in Trump Tower in December of 2016, Jim Comey came up to Trump Tower in a meeting, said to the president, hey, I want to meet with you after this meeting alone. And which was bizarre in of itself. And then he told the president about the Steele dossier, and then 2 days later, that document leaked. And so, look, he's being prosecuted for the potentially lying to two senators about this question, said he didn't leak. And then McCabe and another guy, James Baker, said, in fact, they were asked to leak. I think that what's happening here is that Jim Comey is changing the definition of what a leak is. And his defense is going to be, as he stated to Anderson Cooper on CNN, that he didn't consider it a leak unless he leaked classified information. What he's going to say is that I leaked unclassified information, and that's why I answered the question the way I did.
And Dan, I want you to...
This is the road he's going, and it's flabbergasted.
Dan, I want you to respond to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it has to be a leak about the Trump or the Clinton investigations, right? I mean, that was the specific question at issue. And as of now, when you talk about Andrew McCabe, for example, the Department of Justice Inspector General looked into that, listened to what McCabe said, listened to what Comey said, and said, we find Comey's account more credible than McCabe's. And what makes that particularly interesting is that they almost indicted McCabe back in 2019 for lying about the same conversation. They couldn't get a grand jury to indict, and now they're going to indict James Comey for that. So I don't think that's what this is about. I think this, in the end, is about another conversation. But look, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't even think that many in the Trump administration believe they're going to get a conviction. I think that there's a 95% plus chance that there won't be a conviction, that it'll either get dismissed by a judge, there'll be a hung jury, there'll be an acquittal. But I'm not certain that that's the end goal here. And that's what makes this so unusual, because typically a prosecutor's office will not bring a case unless they think they can win it.
And Chris, even if they don't get a prosecution, even if they don't get him a prosecution, if they don't find him guilty of something like that, part of this is the chilling effect, is it not?
Well, it is, Martha. Let me say this as someone who prosecuted these kind of cases. You know, the fact is that the president has made it nearly impossible now to get a conviction because of the things he said, the way he's prejudged the evidence, the way he said he's a liar, he's guilty, and the way he directed Pam Bondi by saying, Pam, it's time to do this, when everyone knew that the statute was getting ready to run. The 5-year statute on this statement was getting ready to run on Tuesday. So that was the imperative that the president was talking about. It's clear. And so he's made it very difficult for any prosecutor to be able to get a conviction on this case, because on the face of his comments, he's saying, go get this guy. That's not the president's job. And in fact, a jury may look at this, and certainly, as Dan said, a judge will look at this. The other problem is that we have a situation where everyone else now is waiting to see who's next. And when he was asked who's next, he said there will be others.
He's looked at you, Chris. He's threatened you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have any worries or concerns about that at all, Martha. This is not about me. It's about the conduct of the president. And the fact is that he's making it very difficult. I am sure that Todd Blanche in particular, who is an experienced prosecutor, is shaking his head at some of the stuff he's had to deal with here. And so you're looking at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Eastern District of Virginia, a very important one because it deals with so much of our national security problems, is essentially being gutted because they decided that there was not enough evidence here, something that the grand jury already decided on one count, which is very, very unusual for a grand jury.
And Reince, Republicans repeatedly accused Joe Biden's administration of weaponizing against President Trump, weaponizing the Justice Department. Isn't that exactly what is happening here?
I don't think any Republican gives one rip about this issue of weaponizing, because we've been through so much. I've personally been so much through Crossfire Hurricane, the Russia investigation, hundreds of thousands of dollars in criminal defense fees for something that was totally ridiculous. These guys came into my office, told me that there was nothing to the Russia hoax in February of 2017, told me to my face that it was BS and overstated, then leaked leaked stories to the press to string us up, twist us in pretzels. I'm sorry. You know what? We had a U.S. attorney go into a grand jury, convince 12 members at least of a grand jury that there was likely a crime here, and they did it in Alexandria, Virginia, where Donald Trump won 20% of the vote. I think that people that think that there's nothing here or that he's going to win on a targeted prosecution, you don't know where this is going. You don't know what other evidence is going to turn up, and nobody knows where this is going to go.
Okay, thanks to all of you this morning. We appreciate your analysis.